Hey everyone, thanks for joining. Thanks for joining the YouTube podcast. This is another Fireside chat session. First of the sessions we started last week, and that was with our graduates, kind of giving a glimpse into their experience as graduates and getting into industry. And this week we have it's another end of the spectrum kind of topic where we're talking to four of the, I'd say, key local managers or managing directors or partners, people who own or run companies that deliver design services within Edinburgh, within Scotland. And they're here to kind of join me for a conversation where we talk about how do design services get pitched to clients? How do they get pitched to the marketplace? Kind of what conversations or what things and conversations go on when clients are kind of engaging with a design service company, and kind of how clients are willing to buy in, how they're evangelized to for design services. As we all know in the design community, user-centered design is very important all across the board, whether it's UX, usability testing, accessibility, that kind of thing. But more often not on the ground in the projects, being the designers or developers or even project managers, anyone in a Scrum team effectively, you start to see things getting stripped away for budget, deadlines, that kind of thing. And you'll see it quite often. But what you might not know or might not see, probably won't see, is how that project came to light in the first place, how the client was kind of pitched the design services, and how important in their mind these things are that are key to us and what we do. So understanding that kind of conversation that goes on and hearing about the experiences from the people that actually engage with the clients and are at that level where they're delivering the services initially before the teams come in, that kind of thing, is going to be of key interest, because it's the kind of thing that most people won't see or know of. So this is about giving a glimpse inside of that whole part of the project or package that happens before work is even done, and understanding what clients see, how they're engaged, that kind of thing. And I've always found it of interest, and so I'm sure everyone here will as well. So I'll welcome on our guest just now. We've got, if I can get the right keyboard here, so I'll take away this, bring on Nathan, Ben, Chris, and Gordon. So we're joined here, and most people in the industry will probably know these guys, if not a few at least. Chris Rourke here is the MD of UserVision, one of the well-known companies in Edinburgh for user experience, things including especially accessibility and usability. We've also got Nathan Fullwood here from Create Future. Am I right in saying you got a big brand in there and a nice brick wall. I'm right in saying it's kind of marketing and design overall.
It's design and innovation company, yeah. So it's across everything: brand, products, proposition, marketing. So
excellent. And we've also got Ben Hutton here from XDesign, managing director. Got a nice picture, but no sign. And then we've got a nice doodle. I think is it a doodle or is it an actual picture behind Gordon McLaughlin here from Primate? Is that a doodle, Gordon?
Hello.
Behind you.
It's a masterpiece. There you go.
Masterpiece. Yeah. I have seen that before. Yeah, it's nice. So yeah, from Primate, another design company based. Are you still based in the offices down the bottom of the city?
Yeah, just down the bottom of Broughton Street in Cannon Mills.
Cool, sweet. And XDesign, where are their offices now, Ben?
We are in Dean Village, Belford
nice.
Road.
You outgrew, was it 2 offices in the past 2 years?
Yes. And we were about to go into another one 2 weeks away from signing terms before a pandemic hit, and we pulled back from that.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, this year has just been immensely weird, different, and challenging for everyone. for businesses galore. However, I don't know if you'll probably share the same view, because we all work in digital mainly. Well, product is more than digital, but digital is a big piece of that. So that is growing, if not still remaining. Do you all see the same kind of thing? Still kind of strong in that sector?
Yeah, I think I speak for Create Future. We've probably not hit the numbers as that we projected, but we did put pretty ambitious figure for growth this year, like 45% or something, which is pretty ambitious. We've quite hit that, but we've grown, so in this climate, this year we're still hiring, we're still brought on new clients, we're still profitable every month, so touch wood, can't complain, and I think that's representative of the fact that clients are still spending money on improving particularly their digital experiences, and the services, and there's still a desire to make sure that those are evolving. In some cases, just delivering against the roadmap they already had, but in many cases, it's about shifting and adapting to the fact that they're having to deliver more of their services online. So, in terms of a sector, I think we've been relatively, if you've got a well put together business, then I think you're not in a bad position to kind of to see yourself through this. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you guys would concur with that.
Yeah, I think so. The first couple of months was a bit of a shock. Everyone slammed on the brakes, but then people realized, well, if we're going to be doing any business, it's going to be through the digital channel more than anything. And, so let's try and make that as good as possible. So definitely saw an immediate pause for a few months, but I think people just saying we have to get on and do it anyways. And realizing that, it's changing some user behaviors as well. That's a message we're saying. It's like people's behaviors are changing due to the lockdown situation. So I want to look further into that.
I think for us, because so we do digital design, but we do a lot of software development, and what we saw was, if anything, there's a lesson about having a diverse client portfolio, because we have lots of clients in the drinks industry and travel industry, and they have not fully returned. The drinks industry is coming back, but the travel industry is absolutely on its knees still. So there's a bit of an adaptation to those things. I would say that what we're seeing is things coming back at a massive rate, an accelerating rate over the last month as people prepare for the new year. That's sometimes just due to practicalities where there is now a use it or lose it budget element. The budget wasn't taken away from them, but it's going to get taken away in April, so they want to use it. But there's also some of the downsides where people have just dusted off briefs from January and have re-put them back on the table as if nothing's changed. So there's that to deal with as well.
Okay. Interesting stuff. What about you, Gordon? How's Primate doing? Fully digital still, yeah?
Yeah, it's been good, I have to say. Like, I think, like you guys, we had a bit of a halt over the spring, and then summer and autumn. It's been really good. It's picked up. Everyone's moving digital. Like Ben was talking about, we've got a diverse client base, which has helped a lot. So all in all, I think it's going to actually end up being a pretty good year for us, in spite of COVID, which is great for us. It's obviously sad to see what's happening to businesses, but things just moving more and more to digital now.
No, it's definitely an interesting year. I think most of us here in this whole sector and industry, design, digital, what have you, are quite lucky. If not having a job, there's lots of jobs coming out there because there's lots of projects still going on. So cool. I'll kick off with the main topic of this session, and just kind of dive into a conversation with everyone here and kind of get some input from each's experiences. So I'll send it to Chris first. The first question I have is, how do you initially get clients interested in your services, and what makes them want to include good design practice and user-centered kind of morals that we have in the first place?
Well, through any way possible, as probably the others would agree. There's various channels. Speaking at conferences, events like this, doing blogs occasionally, things like that, and sometimes it hits the right mark. sometimes actually doing speculative things. Well, we do little events, we call them breakfast briefings, and those can be really good to just plant the seed and let people know how much they don't know. So that's often been a good way to start the conversation. I think one of the better ways. And then occasionally it could be when we do training courses, sometimes as a adjunct to that, projects come from that. And usually, I think perhaps slightly differently than those that are more on the full service kind of spectrum of a design company. When someone comes to, we don't profess to be a web design company or the digital front end designers in the aesthetic way. When they come to us, they realize that they've got a weak link in their armory about actually making sure that it's going to be user-centered and properly user-centered. And actually, for some of them, quite a few, the end client is saying, well, look, I've got these designers that are with a silver tongue telling me this is going to be the most wonderful thing. But you know what? I could do with a bit of validation that this is going to actually be the case. And certainly this has been the case for one of our big clients in airline. It was very much we're the big client. We've got these people doing the design. We want you to keep an eye on them to make sure that when they're promising this wonderful stuff, that it is actually independently validated as actually being really usable, as really accessible. Because, for instance, in accessibility, the client really doesn't know. The managers don't know the technical bits of accessibility. It's quite detailed. So it's often in that case acting as a watcher in that case. So it's slightly different. I think when they come to us, they know they have a need. Yeah,
definitely. Cool. I'll pass that as well to Nathan.
Yeah, I'm not going to a kind of business development strategy. That's like how we get ourselves out there and the like. But I think in my answers, kind of like that question is often what's been successful for us has been finding the right person within an organization. I would say we have kind of two persona that tend to bias. There's a persona that just really want good, capable people who are going to get the job done, and they're not really bothered about how or the bells and the whistles. But actually, the people that we have the best relationships with, we kind of call them change makers. They tend to be slightly maverick. They have often moved recently into an organization that they might perceive as staid or stuck in their ways. And they often have a belief that there's a better way. They may have worked with us before in another role or another company and moved into, let's say, a bank where things are maybe kind of a bit slow, ponderous, hierarchical, siloed, etc., and thought, well, I need to demonstrate that there's a different way of doing this. So, and then they will bring us in as a way of kind of demonstrating through work that there's a different way to do things, either to be more human-centered with all the benefits that bring, or to work in a more agile and collaborative fashion. So it's really important for us to identify, build relationships with those people, support them in the conversations that they're having within the bank, but also recognize often that they're working in an environment where there might be some resistance as well, so they've got changes that they want to make. So it's very much about supporting them in those conversations.
Yeah, definitely. So definitely the point of evangelism then.
Yeah,
you've already got someone kind of homemade there.
I think the point of evangelism, you need to be really careful. Evangelism for me kind of often has a sort of, like a burning sword or a,
okay.
I think you've got to be mindful of being almost too passionate sometimes, or too, you've got to recognize that this is new to some people, that there's a bit of fear around it sometimes as well. So I think it's really important to understand the context of the environment that you're selling into, and use that language where you can, and moderate your, your evangelism, I think, where appropriate. And shift that really just to more things that they're used to, like practical benefits of, we will deliver this faster, we will de-risk, it will be cheaper because we'll have tested it, the ideas earlier in the process. These are the kind of things that they can buy and they can get their heads around, rather than practitioner-led evangelistic language.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I'll pass on to Ben.
So I guess unlike Nathan and Chris, where the service is inherently one of design and discovery, we can often have to come from the place of backwards justifying it. So we often start with a brief, and a brief is inherently this concept that somebody has understood the requirements, and that is what's being given to us, essentially to design and build, because that's often how we're sort of thought about. And what we have to do is work backwards to explain those processes about coming up with those requirements, not just doing it in a silo, and having to justify it. But really, what Nathan says really resonated about the evangelism piece is that has never worked for us. We've had to we have to move the needle step by step by step in order to do that. It's kind of like the story of the little road signs. Is that well known? Does everyone already know this story? So I'm going to get both the dates and numbers and locations wrong, but who cares about that? The story still makes a good point. So there is a local authority in the States who has built out this massive suburban track, and what they've discovered is as people turned into the streets and they had the slow children crossing, the streets became so long that the cars would speed back up again. And the thing that they found definitely worked was to have a massive sign every few meters that said "slow children crossing" as a reminder. But the only place to put those signs were in people's gardens. So the local authority said, "Hey," went round the house and said, "Can we put a meter by a meter sign that says 'slow children crossing' into your garden?" And they went, no, you can't. So they hired an agency to come up with a campaign that would work. And what they said was, we'll get everybody to put a little sign, a foot by a foot, but no one will be able to read it. No one will be able to understand it. And it's like, just do that. And most people said yes. And of course, then they went back 2 months later and said, "Oh, you've had the little sign. It's not quite working. Can you take the big sign now?" And the majority of people said yes, because they had sold them the little sign. I think a lot of the time people go in swinging for the fences and trying to get everybody to buy the big sign straight away. And that has never worked for us.
Yeah, no, makes sense as well. Yeah. I can imagine that happens a lot, especially when people might be so passionate about what they're trying to do as well. Back on the evangelism point, it can probably be hard for a lot of people to moderate that, at least at first as well.
Yeah, we all believe in it. That's the thing. We all want things to be done well as well. But I think all of us have been in the game long enough to know that you have to take your time sometimes to kind of together. Some people will come and buy it because they want it, the full thing, and that's great. Go for it. But others, you just got to be mindful. Sneak it in project by project.
Yeah,
it works.
And what about the folks at Primate Garden?
I would echo what Ben said. I think it's a really great metaphor. I mean, we find actually a lot of our best accounts now are ones that have started with a small project and have just grown, through relationship and time. And often, people, either we have these grand ideas when we start, or the client has grand ideas, and you have to kind of shape it into something a bit more manageable and a bit more digestible and, more focused on a better timescales and budget and so forth. But then actually, as you grow it and work with them over a year or 2 years or 3 years, you can start to do so much more and unlock so many more things. So I think that's a really good metaphor, and I completely agree with that. It's kind of start with a manageable way of, tackling the initial piece of work, and then just throughout that relationship, just grow it. And then, also from a business perspective, it's good for, clients to be able to test and see what's working and slowly build on it, rather than spending 6 months designing and building something that you might launch and it doesn't work. No one wants to buy. So, I think that iterative, small pieces at a time approach is a good way to go, both for businesses and from the client side.
Cool. So from everyone was singing from the same sheet there pretty much. In terms of the clients following through with what most of us would deem best practice, or kind of bringing in the right methods and processes to do right by the user, say, the process of starting small and going large when possible, there's obvious risk that those kind of things just get dropped out. But because we're talking about sales here and not just design, is that just acceptable loss so you can still get in there and do good with what you can if you can't do the whole thing? And that's for the floor.
Well, from my perspective, I think it's also how you phrase what you're selling. I think it's design can become something that's commoditized, and if people are just approaching you for a design work, well, it's hard to then justify what you're spending or what you're doing, and it can just be about comparing figures and at the end of the day in quotes from different agencies. Whereas actually, if you try and abstract it and say, well, actually, what's the impact of our work? What is the results of the work we're doing? If it's about user interface design, if the end goal is to achieve more signups or less churn or more retention, that could be more money. And then actually, therefore, when you put it in perspective, maybe spending more time and do more research and more of these things up front is more valuable because the end impact's higher. So just actually, I think changing that conversation and not just selling design as a commodity helps a lot in terms of framing what you're actually doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the way you described it, Gordon. I sometimes see this, and I'm sure I've said this to clients. It's almost like a capital expenditure, an operational expenditure for building a building or anything like that. And sometimes the person you're engaged with or engaged to is more that I have to deal with this relatively short-term capital expenditure. I need to get this thing done by this date, and I've got this budget. And perhaps a little bit less interested in the operational expenditure part, which the equivalent of that is we could be improving that conversion rate. We could be improving that retention. I think that trying to discern from them, are you someone that's really concerned for this in the long term, as in the operational expenditure, how it's going to work in the long run? If you do, that's great. That's the ideal client, a better client, I think, than someone who just needs to deliver a short-term project to, and step along the sprint schedules and get it out the door.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Was there any art?
Yeah, sorry. You described us in the intro, I think, as, I can't remember, like the bridge between the client and the people doing the work. But in reality, and particularly maybe in larger agencies or organizations, there's quite a few links in that chain. And I've been through all of them. I've been from, from account management through to account directors, to running, to now being responsible, as these guys are, to kind of championing this and trying to protect that every opportunity. But I've been in those situations where I've had to come, from the client and say, look, budgets have been cut, timescales have been cut, we need to, something needs to change. It's difficult. They're really difficult conversations. And I would urge kind of dialogue, in those situations. I think, if you're the practitioner and you know that there's a better way to do it, I think hopefully you're working with educated account managers and account people who understand the value of it. But I think there's an ongoing job for practitioners to keep, you can evangelize actually internally. You can be the ones who are championing best practice and reminding everybody why we test, and why we use design patterns, and why we have kind of good practice in an agency, and also installing a spirit of innovation, of trying new things as well, so that everybody in an organization understands the value of it. It'll mean that your account managers push back a little bit harder to the account directors, and then the account directors will push back a little bit harder to the client, and they'll find other ways to hopefully protect budgets or to soften those blows.
Yeah,
I would definitely. Sorry, Gordon.
No, carry on.
Personally, I would suggest that practitioners read a book called The Challenger Sale by Matthew Dixon. I know that might seem an odd one in terms of design books to read. So The Challenger Sale has a number of points about being a salesperson. And I think it is one of the strings of the bow that most of the UX or design practitioners I meet don't feel like it's their responsibility. Like it's an account manager, a salesperson, someone else's responsibility to do this sale. And that, as is described in the Challenger Sale, that when you profile people who have been encouraged to become relationship builders, which I think a lot of practitioners in this area are, that's a really prized skill. that is often the antithesis of the skill needed to make a case for something being done, and that actually you have to become comfortable with what he refers to as constructive tension, the ability to live with a differing point of view and not concede because you have established a platform of competence. And again, these are very unsexy phrases, competence, right? But demonstrating competence early, directly to the client from design is one of the key hurdles. Chris Hatfield, he of the chief of the International Space Station, the Canadian that played the guitar up there. I was at a talk that he did, and he was asked how, what he was being, what lessons he had learned for the business world from being up there. And he said, and he admitted that one of the things that makes things a lot easier for him is that everybody he works with is genius level athletes, much like this panel here, all genius level athletes. But actually, that what they teach you is that everybody has their own role, and to teach you to recognize competence, and that once somebody has shown competence in the role that they've been given, when you're upside down and on fire, and it's somebody's got to reboot the console with a CD-ROM, which is something like legit happened, and he goes, "Who's going to do that?" And someone puts their hands up and says, "I'll do it." He knows that person now. Who knows what the competence to that is, but they've demonstrated their competence in something else, in something smaller. And I think that's really key, is that sort of understanding that you can build a relationship and you can do things by demonstrating your competence at doing the task that's in front of you, and not being defeated by that, but seeing that as an opportunity to demonstrate your competence. And then when the next things comes up, you'll have a place to build some tension and to challenge whether there would be a better way. And it's a stepped process rather than the jump straight through to the end one.
Yep, no, interesting stuff. Gordon, did you have something to add as well?
Yeah, I was just like hearing everyone talk. I mean, I think we're on the same wavelength. We talk about evangelism and sort of competency and everything. And I think for me, I've always thought about it that agencies probably have a duty to educate. Like we tend to I think a lot of agencies forget that the clients we work with don't know as much, because obviously it's our bread and butter. We do it every day, and you're dealing with clients who are in marketing or different aspects, and they've got different priorities. So, it's quite natural, I think, for them to not understand, all right, this is why you have to go through this process. This is why you have to do these steps or these pieces of work, and actually we kind of take it for granted, and then we forget, like a lot of the clients we work with, sometimes they might do one web project in that job, or something, or they're not doing it every day like we are. And actually, I think, we do have a duty to try and educate people and explain to them and build that trust and not share the knowledge and really talk about these things and get them, and sort of explain why it's useful doing certain things and what the impact has and why it's good to do it that way, and not just kind of take it for granted that everyone that we work with knows the same things that we do.
Yeah. Or are about to just accept that you know better and are telling them what's right. Yeah. I think that goes for more than just the agencies or companies overall. It's the individuals, the designers, everyone. We all, to a certain degree, think that, or fail to remember that not everyone understands what's in our mind 5-10 years into your career, whatever.
Yeah, totally. I think really quickly on this point, I think just trying to get out of a them and us mentality is really, really helpful, all the way through it. I'm going to overshare here, actually. We lost the pitch today, which is unusual for us. We don't often pitch, not losing, but we don't often pitch. I think it's only my third or fourth in 4.5 years that we've had here. So we lost it because the client got the process and everything and knew we could do the work. We've worked with them many times before. I'm not sour about losing it. The feedback was that actually we hadn't explained how we would take them through the process and and they wanted to learn and they wanted to be supported. And a part of the brief was, how are you going to enable us and support us and leave us in a better place through this? So it's frustrating because we really do that and we put a lot of effort into that. We just didn't communicate it as well on this occasion. But I tell the story because, I think there's an assumption that clients always want it faster, dirtier, cheaper, there's a change. There's a change that hopefully in progressive organizations that they want to upskill, and they want to learn from the people that they work with, and they're expecting clients they're expecting their partners to help them and take them through this through things like education and through like delivering best practice through their work. So shouldn't think of yourself as on a front line. I think again in other language you used was like on the line. It's not a war. This is sure. So.
Fair enough. Good point. Yeah, I may well bring in words and describe things in the wrong way,
right.
But I'm glad partly that I do, because then it gives you the chance to say no, just wrong. But yeah, it sounds like. So I appreciate you sharing that. Actually, it sounds like they were maybe worried that things would just get thrown over the wall. That a lot of companies might be worried about.
Not as much as that, but there is that risk.
Okay.
I mean, I think you've got an opportunity to educate your clients through the work that you do. Not just 100%. We started specifically because we didn't want to be an agency and then echo this. The worst clients are the one who just say, here, do this, and then give it back when it's done. It's terrible. Not with a bad product, that nobody believes in or can sustain or understands, right? So you want to work through the process with a client. And then if you're going to be doing that anyway, why not be an open book? Why not educate and inform and involve and engage people all the way through, so that the next project comes up, they want to do it in the same way, and actually, even when they're not working with you, those best practices are left behind, and you've changed a little bit of the thinking, spread a little bit of your best practice around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no,
I think that's really, really good point from Nathan there, because we see that as well. And I think the old feeling was, and certainly in agency, was that you can't give away the secret sauce. I think that still exists in consultancy. Unless they're paying you X amount a day or they've engaged you, then don't give it away. But it's a misunderstanding that it's a flywheel, right? The more you can get the client up to speed, the more that they want. I mean, it's a flywheel or heroin or something like that, essentially, right? The more they take, the more they want, and that creates opportunities, and it's opportunities done with better educated people who are your peers, who understand the value of what you do. It's not a finite resource. It's not petroleum, right? It's a clean, renewable energy source. Good practice, and that's something to be encouraged.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that sort of sharing knowledge. I find the more we share and the more we talk and the more we collaborate, the more business you do, and the more the better relationships you have with clients, the more you work with them, and it's just a kind of a win-win for everyone. So yeah, I completely agree with that. I think trying to turtle and us v them and hide your knowledge and not share it and be protectionist doesn't work at the end of the day, because I don't think it leads to a better relationship.
Yeah, definitely. Words like co-design are often used in that case. It can be designing with the users and the end client in the same room, and that can be scary sometimes for many clients, but so exciting and so effective and so educational. And we're in a fortunate position to often be seeing clients, let's say, watching a usability test, and especially in the face-to-face way, where they might be in the room next door from the participant, and seeing their users sometimes for the first time. The problem is, the challenge is getting them to that point. They have to be curious enough that they actually want to be doing that, and not cynical and pushing back about some of the methods. So even things such as personas. I remember talking to someone. I was trying to warm them up about the idea of personas are a great way to get start to look through. And start to understand your users a bit better, and that's got to be good, etc. And pretty much the pushback was, look, I'm not interested in that. It's kind of like playing Barbies for grown-ups. I'd rather we have to just get something out the door. And I knew that was going to be a tough sell. Take someone from Barbies for grown-ups into actually personas can be a really good catalyst for everyone. You have to choose your battles, and that was one that I wasn't going to win.
Barbies can be for grown-ups. Some of us might enjoy Barbies.
Yeah, exactly. What's wrong with Barbies?
But I think, sorry, Chris, I think that choosing your battles is really important. I think we qualify really hard, and maybe, I don't know, maybe everyone in a business or an agency doesn't see how much qualification kind of goes on. And, we say no to work where you do get that sense that somebody's just not going to get it, or is not going to be fun to work with. Often pre-sales, which, pre-sales can be very telling. If you're going through a sales qualification process and you're having these conversations and, and that's difficult, then 9 times out of 10, the project is difficult as well. So I think you have to have these principles. If you really believe in this stuff, and hopefully it goes to the top of your organization, hopefully the people who represent you are qualifying based on, whether there's going to be good cultural alignment, between your organization and the client. You've got to have these, if you really believe in it, you've got to have these principles, and principles, unless they cost you something, occasionally they're just platitudes, So I think, you've got to know when to say no. As Chris was saying there, to kind of like pick your battles. So,
yeah.
The other thing here is that when we talk about the client, what I tell the people I work with is the client is actually 3 people all in one. The client is the role that they're playing, their job title, the representation of the company that they work for, and their own individual worries and fears, and that any one of those things, and a combination of those, can be a deciding factor in how much they're willing to engage, and that can be quite complicated. I ask the people who go into meetings for me to just try and profile people as somebody who wants weapons or armor, not to bring it back to the war metaphor, but essentially, is this somebody who wants tools to fight the good fight and make the best thing and do the right stuff? Cool. Like, we've got lots of things for that. We all know we can advocate for that. Or is this somebody who wants armor, who wants to be told about risk mitigation? And actually, things like personas can be used in both ways. We actually use personas as the sort of profiling tool for the client to some degree, because we find that we can use personas. If you're a weapons person, great, let's discover what it is that they're going to really want. If they're an armor person, then we use them as, we sort of refer back to the original Alan Cooper version, where they were sort of used to protect against the elastic user. And we go, look, at some point your boss or someone's going to come along and they're going to go, why can't it be more yellow? And you're going to have nothing to say. You're going to have no reason to not make it more yellow or to make it do X, Y, or Z. But if you've got a small set of personas, then we've got a safe space for that place to go, which of these personas would like it to be more yellow? And when they go, we don't know, you go, well, you signed those off. So it's just so that's the way of framing that. And that gives somebody who wants armor a reason to do a little bit of user research, because and I might come across as sort of as a client apologist here. They don't. So we were doing. Here's a story. So we were doing a project for a large drinks company that everybody would know the name of, and we're building out prototype for them. We're doing the right thing. Everybody wants to do the right thing, and they've got to sign off to do it. And we're giving them a dummy schedule about when we'll do, and they're like, oh, so when's the right time for us to do testing? It's like, well, every week we'll have an iteration. So every week we would do it. And then just this little alarm went. And then, of course, we make changes based on their feedback. And they went, oh, there's no time for changes. And so it's like, well, what's the point of the user feedback then? And they wanted to do the right process, but the business case they'd made, it said that they would have a prototype that did X, Y, and Z, and that's what had been procured. So their rules of engagement were limited about what they were able to do. And so there's certain things that you have to work within the boundaries that they've given you.
Yeah, it's interesting to know that occurs sometimes, and that's why things get maybe chopped off the list, despite the people wanting to do it. Overall,
procurement is a huge thing. Sorry, just to be clear on this, procurement is a massive thing. That same company wanted to buy pure agile sprints from us in that version, and it got all the way to procurement, and they said, sure, but what do we get and when?
Yeah,
and it's the people's ability to procure things. We were doing a project that started late for a utility company because procurement had a questionnaire that insisted that we gave them our perimeter fencing policy, just because they'd lifted and shifted something from their old one. Like they're not. We talk about the sort of client, but the client is the entire thing that, as Nathan was saying, the chain links in the chain, and procurement is one of those things. And having this sort of unknown that might come out at the end of it, like, oh, if we don't find this out by X, we might have to do it again. They don't like it. Like there has to be someone who's going to evangelize for that on their side, that to make that go through. Not everybody, not always, but that is one of the things.
Yeah. I think that point of the kind of the process and the accountability and the risk, I mean, it's kind of words that you throw around. Everyone thinks it's like big business and so forth, but it is important because, you could have 9 out of 10 projects. And if you don't, where everything goes fine, but it's that one project where both from an agency perspective and a client perspective, where, if you don't do it right, that it could really blow back in your face. If you don't do planning properly, if you don't do your research properly, then that's how you get up with bad projects. So actually I think there's a good argument for doing it right, and also saying to the client, like, this is why we want to do it right and we want to invest the time, because you're going to be able to then present it to your board and show them the findings. You're going to be able to talk them through the information. There's rationale behind it. You've got, to use the war terminology, we're on like the ammunition for like the decisions that were made, and it isn't just opinion, and maybe opinion is fine for 9 out of 10 cases, but it's that one case where suddenly it's not, and it's a big problem.
So do you feel like sometimes you're put in a tricky position where they're giving you strict expectations, therefore you can't grow on that from the first instance anyway, and therefore you can't put it in as a business case, or maybe it's not signed off by one of those people in the chain, therefore they'll get to the end of the project, you'll suggest, no, we want to test more, or it has to be like best practice says you should be doing this, and they're like, no, we're done, we're fine, we've got it now.
I think that sometimes happens, where quite often the client will just say, it needs to be delivered by this time, and whatever you can get done. And it can be frustrating because we'd ideally want to get in, let's say, 2 or 3 rounds of usability testing, but there's in our area there's often a lot of no, it's not quite ready. You can't test it until it's all put together, and it's a continual dance, or it's just not ready. It's on the day of the testing, and all sorts of funny things happen there. But these things do become a big barrier in that way, and we have to be very responsive and flexible, and just say, well, we can work to your budget. This is the way ideally we would like it, and there's a few reasons why we'd like to iterate it and not rely on one, let's say, single round of usability testing at the end after doing some research in the beginning. But there's a lot of forces at play within all of our clients that we can't really fully control, namely time and budget. And best we can do is be flexible in those cases, and let them know what they're sort of missing out on as well, and the risks that they're opening themselves out to, whether legal and things like accessibility, etc. It's about communicating that clearly, but persuasively. That's not going to be threatening to them, I think.
Yeah, and not overbearing, like trying to curb your enthusiasm. One of the viewers was saying, going back to the evangelism might be too much at the beginning of the chat. It sounds like overall that when I said that the beginning stages of this was like a seed, that's true in more than one respect. So when you get a client or you get a piece of work and you already know what services you're delivering on, you're still in your mind and your team's mind is still the seed, and that can still grow. So when you're working with them, you've got all the chances in the world to just profess, you could be doing this, you could be doing that, and these are the risks of maybe missing this out or whatnot. And also everyone involved, everyone in the team, it's their responsibility to communicate and openly work with the clients, as opposed to just be closed off in their own little kind of silo of design work and just kind of headphones on and just get it done. It's a whole team effort to grow that thing.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It is, and I think sorry, carry on, Nathan.
I was going to say, like most of my, as us representing kind of best practice, we need to know what that best practice is, and that comes from, we educate ourselves, but we are not the all and end all of what best practice is. For me, that's always come through working with great software engineers or working with great UX designers or designers or copywriters, and understanding what's important to them and what they're learning in their field, and I know enough. And I understand why it's important to them, and then I can go out and represent it. So that dialogue internally of like, what's everybody learning? How does people and trying new things as well, finding the opportunities to try new things. It might be on internal projects, is really important. So that so the people who are out there trying to get the work, are also out there trying to find opportunities for their teams to do new things and to try new things as well.
Yeah.
I think that's just even bringing up engineers is one of those things that it probably might come as a surprise to people working with that. Some of these practices have sometimes deserved cynicism towards user research and user-centered design because of where it's gone wrong. Because people have designed things that are entirely unimplementable or unbuildable, or has made things 1% better for the user, but is now 10 times harder to build forever because now there's a focus on users or doesn't have the business goal. The classic in the user-centered design world, milk would be at the front of the shop, but the reason milk's at the back of the shop is it matters what the shop owner wants somebody to do, right? Like it is a three-dimensional puzzle, and when you only look at one piece of it and you only get one person from there, like we had one project which was made by one of the big four, and I got asked to come in, and I was asked how much of this could I build in 12 weeks, and it was like the Matrix with a more complicated front end, using algorithms that didn't exist with data sources that were unobtainable. But they'd sold the vision, and you know what? Users really wanted it. Users really, really wanted it. It's at least a sort of £100 million tech project to build, and so there's a lot of it has a debt to pay, and that if you don't bring the forgotten sort of engineers on that journey as well, but making sort of solution that's implementable, then you're building yourself some pretty major resistance when it comes to actually it getting built in the end.
Yeah. I think so. I think that business case is really important. It's like we talked about at the start, and I think on the flip side of kind of doing everything good practice as well is just trying to be aware of the value that it brings, and if it's a tiny little piece of work or a tiny bit of a project that's actually not going to have the exposure, then maybe it's not worth investing all the time. And so it's just about, I think, like you said, Ben, really thinking about what the objectives are of it at the end of the day, and trying to do it right and state all of that, but also putting your client hat on and not getting carried away. Because I think sometimes, we fall in the trap of like bringing a huge sledgehammer to fix a tiny little problem, and over-engineering solutions, and actually maybe that wasn't what was needed, and a low tech or a low design was the quickest, easiest solution, and it would have worked. So I think just trying to go back to that, what's the end objective, end goal, and then find the right solution and put a good argument forward.
Yeah, there's that balance there of the perception of value, because a lot of the people who take up these positions and kind of get into this industry wanting to design or develop are diehard, or maybe just they're really passionate at least, and to them, all best practice is the value, but that's not necessarily the case. There's a lot of factors there, so it's difficult to. I mean, all of you as well, like leading teams or having teams, will understand that you have to keep them pumped up and like willing and passionate about their work, but at the same time, you're also seeing, like Nathan, you touched on it before as well, those conversations coming in, and they're not easy to have, but they do occur for various reasons. So then that bridge between the people being passionate about wanting to do the work, but then hearing that's just not going forward. So then they'll feel like that's just what they're passionate about, what they're willing to do is not valued as much. Yeah. But of course, they don't see the whole picture, like you were saying as well, Ben. So
I think people want to get to the top of Everest, and if you tell them, look, you got 9/10 to the top of Everest, that's an amazing achievement. Yeah. It doesn't quite feel like you got to the top of Everest.
It's better than spitting your dummy out and like not even getting to base camp, so take your victories. And as we said, like, just, do the best that you can on work, keep pushing for it and demonstrate that it works, demonstrate the value. And hopefully, next time you get to put a bigger road sign in their front garden, so it just needs that dialogue, all the time. It's a constant thing. So you're going to win some battles, going to lose some battles, but just keep pushing for it. One thing I'd say as well, that if you are advocating for good best practice for design thinking, for human-centered design, is that you're on the right side of history. I would say it's Chris will tell you that 10 years ago, advocating for UX or user research was near impossible. It was an emergent field, and nobody even knew what the letters stood for, like, let alone was willing to buy it or invest in it. And now it's established practice that people just didn't have those roles in companies. Like, now they do, and now there are conferences, and now there are companies specializing in doing it. And the same is happening with design, with agile methodologies, and the same is happening with design thinking. I think, as no disrespect, as the technical build often gets a little quicker or easier through standardization of tools and so on, the more effort goes into the process, and best practice in the process. So if you believe in this stuff, as I say, your time will come. It's the industry is kind of catching up to it. People in client side, there's more roles on the other side who understand and want to do kind of great design, and work in more agile ways and so on. So,
yeah. It's definitely one of those generational things that's in the industry. It's a generation in its own right, the whole emphasis on. And that's why I called this talk Modern Design Practices. Chris did point out, am I talking about user-centered design? Yes, I am. But in terms of this whole field, I wouldn't just say UX, is relatively still new. And in the past 10, 20 years, it has been extremely difficult. But then the past 5 years or so, it's just become more common, more expected, more wanted. And you'll see, this is partly why I done the graduate thing last week, because you've got a lot more people seeing the merit and the excitement of working in this industry. And they get, one of the first things to get right into is methods and best practices, and wanting to do it right, and wanting to do it with heart and passion. But then, and that's exactly why I wanted to have this chat with you guys as well, because there is a whole other side of it, the kind of, I'd say the main working of it to even establish that work to come in. So then it was interesting to see the in between of those two sides.
It's the best sales for good modern design is the fact that the success of the companies that follow it. I mean, some of you may have seen the graph, I forget who put it out, that shows the strong correlation between the level of adoption of user-centered design and the value of the company, and measured in some way. And those that actually practice human-centered design, their graph goes up like this, and all the others go like that. And I forget who did that graph, but that can be quite compelling. And I think that's a great driver. It's a great background. I think we're on a rising sea in that way. I think more people are becoming aware of it. Long gone are the days, it's more than 10 years ago, I suppose, when I remember someone was trying to set me up to be on a conference. It was going to be like a debate, and it was supposed to be, okay, so we're going to have a debate between design and usability. Okay, so we're going to have this designer, is a web designer, graphic designer, arguing on one case, and Chris, your job is going to be like the usability, and you have to argue why usability is good, and you're both going to hash it out. And I said, no, I'm not going to be part of that, because they're supposed to, it can look aesthetically nice and also be good design, so that we're not enemies. It was such a false argument. I said, this is silly. So I don't think it ever went ahead. But still, I mean, no one would think of doing that now. But honestly, more than 10 years ago, it was seen as like, oh, the usability is like the usability police that come around with a waggy finger and make everyone sad. They say, no, that's not usable or not,
Yeah, it sounds like the risk department in a bank.
Yeah.
Well, 2 years ago, just even 2 years ago, from one of the major high street banks, we got asked to fill in a sort of a new vendor questionnaire, which on a linear graph from 0 to 10 asks us to score ourselves from more technical to more creative. Because obviously it's impossible. Somewhere on that scale you have to be, because they are at opposite ends of the spectrum, clearly, and never the twain shall meet.
We asked to fill those in and give fixed prices for small, medium, and large websites. So, different colours of banners.
Yeah.
So, it's coming back to, procurement wanted to standardise everything. It's
yeah. And what if you put like the middle number for each of those things? You just wouldn't get called back.
Yeah, I think so. That's automatic failure. No one could be both technical and creative. What are you, some sort of unicorn?
Yeah, no, it's interesting. That's the way the industry still is in some areas. Although you touched on it as well, that we are growing. There's more education out there, and people are going to come around to the understanding of what all this means. But there's still a fight to go there. A fight or an effort or a challenge, whichever word. But we're definitely on the right side of history as well, like you said.
An opportunity. Huh?
Yeah. There's always opportunity. You have to be blind to not see opportunity.
More transparency would be nice. I mean, it was interesting talking about like the companies that invest in like their UX and the value that it brings. And it's interesting because you look at companies like Google and Apple and things, and they make it all look so effortless. And I sometimes see that as a bit of a negative in the sales process because everyone just assumes it's easy. Like you're using Google, you're using iOS, you're using these great technologies pretty much for free. And there's that assumption that, oh yeah, it's easy. Like, of course, why do you need to spend money or why do you need to invest time? Like we've just got this, it's barely costing me anything. And there isn't enough transparency sometimes around like the hundreds of thousands of man hours and thought and effort that have gone into creating these products and just sheer effort. And, I find that really fascinating. It's like we've all got access to these great tools, which are so well designed, a lot of time for very little price. And then you're trying to like sell something and people wonder why is it going to take you, 200 hours to build this or design it? Why is it not like overnight? Why is it not quick? Why is it not easy?
Because everyone has expectations of a great service or a great user interface have risen. Yeah. Well, I just want one of those, so.
Yeah. And people get their knowledge from experience, right? Like that's inherently one of those things. And because we're all experiencing these amazing modern marvels on a daily basis. So the example I give is that the Queen's Ferry Crossing took 6 years with just under 2,000 people. It took 10 million engineering man hours. Uber, over 6 years, took 2,000 engineers and has 10 million engineering man hours. But nobody ever asks to cross a stream by you building them the Queen's Ferry Crossing. I get asked to make some version of Uber on an almost weekly basis because it feels so easy because it's all just there, it's all done. Someone's built it before, right? Just copy and paste it and it'll be fine.
Yeah, I was looking at companies yesterday, and there was one I came across, forget the name of it, but they sold their services based on packages. And on each package was either the Uber logo, the Google logo, the Facebook logo, and it was all like 15K for this, 25K for this. And to be honest, yes, you understand that a lot of people out there buying this stuff see it like that, but it's probably still not the best way to sell it because you're not going to get that. Yeah. And like all successes, like you just said there, Ben, they're years in making, tons of hours, and it's the common argument of people see it as simple, therefore it must be easy, but simplicity is the hardest thing to do. That's the whole point. That's why Apple is Apple. No, that was a really, we're at 1:15 now, or just past 1:15 now. Is there any other key points that anyone want to, and there's lots of bombs there, bombs.
Just one thing I think that Ben's right. I think we've occasionally sounded like client apologists and, and this idea of this attention, and it's always like, fight for what you can get and all that business. But, and that's absolutely right, taking nothing away from that. But equally, I think it is worth continuing to fight for best practice where you can. And I think the best way to kind of secure this in the future, if you're in this for the long run, is to be known for best practice, is to put it out there and to wear it like a badge of honor. Like we created Create Future, to apply design thinking to the kind of challenges that we wanted to. And we left our companies and started something new so we could design all of our processes that way. And we continue to advocate for it, and we want to be known for it. And that will attract the right kind of clients, to us. So I think, it is, you've got to be pragmatic, but you keep fighting for it and being known for it, I think is really important just for that point, because it will bring the right kind of clients in. that'll warm her to this kind of work, that will get to want to work with you in the right way. So you've got to keep advancing your own craft, keep advocating for it with clients and advocating for it in the communities that you're in as well. So staying involved in things like this, is really important.
Yeah, 100%. I was going to add a piece there as well. Sorry, I've totally blanked.
Right.
It was just so good. I've totally forgotten, Nathan. Anyone else want to add a little bit extra there?
I would say, just echo what Nathan said. It's most people I think we all probably started businesses because we're passionate about it, and that's what you bring to the table, and that's so valuable. And you kind of share that passion, and you should never stop. And I think about all the extra time that we've spent on projects over the years that we didn't get paid for, but that's enabled further opportunities. And if we just if we didn't do that, if we didn't apply all the things we wanted to do, we would never have made those gains. So it's
isn't it?
Yeah,
well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's you do it as well because you enjoy it and you want to do it, and that's a big part of it, and the satisfaction we all gain. But yeah, I'd say don't ever stop. You got to keep pushing forward with it.
I remember the thing I had in mind actually was no doubt everyone here has probably turned away work, and one of the key things you learn in business is the power to say no, and it touches on the fact that you become known for best practice or what you believe in, and therefore you will get the right customers coming to you. Therefore, that works out in both ways. It's not just about making money or always getting tons of clients and more the merrier. It's the right ones so you can put out the right work. 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And just to say on that, it's like, if you end up doing work that's not good work, you're not going to make money on it anyway. So it defeats the purpose,
And you'll lose stuff and you'll hate it and you'll go home crying.
Yeah.
So.
I'm sure we've all been there, to be fair. Cool. No, I absolutely love that chat. Thanks so much for giving your time for this. I hope it was as much of value to you guys as it was for everyone watching there and myself. I'll take away a lot from that. And it was just great to have minds like yourself in one chat. It was good. Hope you all felt the same way.
It was awesome. Yeah, thank you very much.
Cool.
It was great. Thank you.
Cool. Well, I appreciate it. This, like I say, this will be on YouTube, so everyone else can kind of watch it whenever they kind of catch it. I've had a few questions in the chat there, just rolling through, maybe just like specific questions to each of you about kind of more about what are your principles or what do you believe in more. Are you happy for me to kind of post out your Twitters for people to get in contact? Yeah.
Sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool, I can do that. So for everyone watching, if apologies if I did miss a question there and we weren't able to kind of bring it up, I will post out the details for each of our guests' Twitters, and then you can feel free to get in touch with them. But yeah, thanks a lot for that. I'll leave it there and let you get back to your evening. But I really do appreciate it, and all the best.
Great.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Cool.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Great.
Thank
you. Cool. So yeah, another great session for us. That was a really interesting fireside chat. I absolutely love that. Not just because I'm a practitioner in the design industry, which everyone here will be, but also in business to a degree of kind of talking to clients, seeing those issues, and kind of understanding that there are balances there, especially when you have a team and you're directing a team and you're having to be that liaison or fight the good fight, or whether it's a fight or not, it's not them and us that was getting brought up again and again there, which is ideal. It's a good point. Communication is key, and the whole thing that happens there when you've got a project or you've got a team in there, it's a partnership or a relationship. So communication is key, and everyone involved, not just the people who run the project or run the company or what have you, everyone is responsible for communicating and kind of vouching for what you're part of at that point in time, and then pushing best practice where you can. So yeah, I hope everyone there was able to glean a good bit of value from that chat. And like I say, I'll post out the Twitter contacts for each of our guests just so you can get in contact. And this will be available on YouTube forevermore. So if there are key things that you want to look back on, I know I probably will myself, you can always go back to it. And yeah, I'll leave you there. But keep looking at our social medias, and we'll be putting up new kind of events coming in the next few weeks. We've got one next week or the week after. We'll be looking to put more fireside chats in like this. So if you've got topics in mind that you want to learn more about, so like last week it was about graduates and how to get into industry. This week it was about kind of clients and the work that goes on. What was my word for it? Positioning modern design practice in the marketplace, or user-centered design, and following through with that. So if there's any topics like that or of that level that you'd want to kind of find out more about, or we have guests on to talk about, then feel free to post it on our social medias. But yeah, apart from that, thanks again for coming along and viewing our session, and I'll see you next time. Thanks again.